Hey guys, welcome to another video. Have you ever wondered how landscape photographers take a plain and boring image and turn it into a mesmerising work of art? Well, today I'm going to show you 3 tips and tricks that will take your images to that level. These 3 simple tricks and maybe one hidden trick will definitely change the way you edit. Let's dive straight in. Okay guys, so we're now in Photoshop and this image to me is pretty well lit. There's not too much I can do to this image, but there's a few things you could deal with. The details, because I like to have a very sharp image. So to me, I do a trick that I class as a high pass filter. I learnt this doing an edit for a face image, a portrait shot, and most people use this as a layer to get rid of blemishes and match color tones and so on and so on. But with me, I use it to sharpen my images. Now all you do is you create 2 duplicates of your background layer. So with me, a shortcut is Ctrl and J. So you do that twice, and you will then go in and you'll close the top layer off and you'll click on the bottom layer, the first copy. You then go filter, you go to blur, Gaussian blur, and you don't want to go overboard. You just want to take the detail out of the image. So I normally find anything up to 10 pixels, but anything over that just makes it really false and a little bit too false. So in my opinion, about 5 to 6 is usually great with a 24 megapixel image. So you click OK, then you will reintroduce the second layer that you copied and you'll click on it. And in this section, you'll go to image, you'll go down to apply image, then you'll go to layer 1, copy, and you'll change the blending to subtract. This will give you a grayish kind of detailed screen, and we're going to change this. So you then come over to your blend modes, which is just over to the right hand side here, and you will change this to linear light. Now it looks like nothing's happened. Well, you're pretty much back to the beginning, but what you're going to do is you'll go back to your layer 1, and in layer 1 you will then bring your fill layer back. Now I'm going to take this to the extreme and go right the way back to 0, just to be able to show you the detail in the image. So what I'll do is I'll zoom in first, and there's quite a lot of detail, to be honest, but we're going to take it to an extreme. So with this slider, we'll pull it all the way back to 0. And as you can see, the image is turned pretty much HDR. It's got way too much detail. Okay, we're going to change that. But all you really need to do is just to bring it back until you see the detail that you really want. Now, to me, I don't normally go much further than kind of 80% because it takes it too far. But this, to me, is the perfect way to create some extra. I'm going to create a stamp visible layer, so I'll hold down Shift, Control and Alt, and then I'll do E, and that will give me a whole layer of what I've just done here. It will copy it, and this, when I turn these off, you'll be able to see when I turn this one off the amount of detail that I've brought back. So from that, which was the original, to that being the more detailed version. So that to me is number 1, what I will do. Normally I leave this till last, but this is one thing I will always do when it comes to creating an image. I'll always add a little bit. If I say I do this to every image, I only do it to images I feel are not just sharp enough. Like if you're taking pictures of flowers, if you're taking pictures of grasslands, mountains, then this is the perfect thing. And you can always do it that you paint in where you want your details. So you can always add a layer here. I can't remember what they call that. A layer mask, that's the word, a layer mask. Had to bring it up on the screen there. and paint in where you want the clarity. So we'll invert the mask by doing Control and I believe it's I. It is I. And then what you do is you paint in where you want it. So if you want all this brickwork to be in detail, you just make sure that this is on a white layer, and then you just paint it in. So now the only bit that's being made kind of stronger in detail is the part that you've painted in. So it doesn't touch the sky, doesn't touch the grass, doesn't do anything else, but it just takes it into the main part. So now when you turn it on and off, you'll see the only bit that's affected is the brickwork. So that, to me, I class it as a high pass filter. It's a very quick and simple thing to do. But if you want a sharper image and make your image stand out even more, that is one step. Now we'll get on to number 2. Okay, so number 2, we're still in the same image. We'll zoom back out. So there's a way of making your images HD and make all your colors pop and your sky pop, things like that. Now, again, this is something I do where I selectively edit. But what you need to do, you need to create another layer. So you want to do Control J. You'll go Filter, Convert to Smart Filter. And then you double tap on this layer, and this will give you another window that will pop up just up here. So we'll double tap on there, and as you'll see, we've got a new window. Now, anything you do in here will need to be saved after, and then it'll appear in your original image. So what I will be doing in this one is I'll be using a filter that's for HDR toning, and it can be found in your images, adjustments, and then halfway down or 3/4 of the way down for HDR toning. So you click yes, and you'll automatically see how much this changes within seconds. See, now all the colors have just popped out. And to me, again, this is a selective thing. If you really want to make your images stand out, this is the perfect way to do it. Now, I don't really use the toning curves and histogram in this section, although you probably could. But in here, I change my highlights and my exposure and my gamma and everything else to create a better image. Now, to me, this image is now too bright, so you don't really need to bring it down too far. But about 20%. Ooh, what happened there? Let's change that to 20. And then if you want your darks darker, you'll probably go in and add some of gamma. And then we'll keep this at about 30% because it always sharpens it anyway. And then if you don't like this being as bright as it is, you can always drop this to, say, 10 or 12. Play around with your vibrance to kind of suit you. I like to add a little bit of vibrance, but very, very well, take away vibrance and add saturation rather than vibrance. And then because the sky gets blown out a little bit, I normally pull the highlights right back and drop the shadows very, very slightly as well. Now, to me, that's already made a huge difference. So then what you do, you click OK. Let it think for a second. And then all you have to do is click Control S to save it. And then when you open up your original document, it's already changed. So now you've gone from a soft, plain and boring image to a HD style image. Now, again, if you do a layer mask and invert it by clicking Control I, you then have the option, again, to paint it in using a paintbrush. So if you don't want everything to be HD styling, you can paint in where you want it. So I like this tree, to me, really needs to stand out a bit more. So I'll paint this in a little bit, only where I feel the sun would have got to it. And then maybe the side of the bridge where the light would be hitting it. So that's given that a bit of a pop. And then the grassed area, I don't really want the water to stand out too much, so you just paint in where you feel it needs. A little tiny bit up here, maybe. So now you've added your pop of colour and detail at the same time, just by using one very simple trick of HDR toning. And that is my tip number 2. Okay, tip number 3. Again, this is a selective one. And all I really like to do is use masks, but I don't do it the same way as other people do it. I like to go back into Camera Raw, and over here you've got your masks. So you can select the sky, you can select your subject, you can even do your background. To me, there is no background for this image, so other than sky, maybe. So what I would do is I would use a few different brushes or linear gradients, maybe a radial filter. But what I do is, for instance, if I want all of this, but not the sky, it's actually easier to pick the sky and then invert it. So if you click sky, it may take a couple of seconds to have a think about it, but it's a pretty good masking, automatic masking, and that will get most of what you need and save you having to deal with problems of every little leaf, branch, everything like that. So again, as I say, this does take a little while to do, and it can be a right pain sometimes, because especially if you've got a lot of detail in the sky and a lot of details in the trees. But I do find this works. Okay, so that's now completely done. So what we'll do, we'll invert it. So we'll use this little icon here. So if you click that, now we've got all of this side of it. So we can now edit this part and leave the sky completely alone. Or you can keep it as it was and edit your sky first. So what we'll do the sky first. So to bring out your detail, I always like to drop the highlight slider. That always seems to bring back the detail in your highlights and any problems like your whites. And then I'll add a little tiny bit of contrast, not too much. And I never add color to the sky. Honestly, it's not worth doing that. If you've got enough detail in the sky, it looks more realistic if you don't. So the only other thing I might change is the shadows to bring some of that back if it needs it, or drop the shadows to bring out some more detail. I don't really think it needs too much. And then a little tiny bit of white to just brighten the image again. And that's pretty much it for that. But what you can then do is you can add another mask, do the same thing again, select sky. And because you've already done it once, it will do it a lot quicker. So this time we'll invert it, and the main half of the image, and we'll try and bring out more detail. So with me, I like to bring out a lot of the shadows and the highlights to create more of a pop to the actual subject. So I always seem to drop the highlights, not too much, but enough to bring out a bit more of the detail in the highlights in case you've blown them out. I bring up my shadows. Usually I'll go up to about 50%. I don't like to go too high. And then I'll look at the image, and if there's anything white that's not, if you watch your histogram up here and you've got these two selected, to find out if you're kind of going into what I class as badlands. So if these are turned on, what happens is when you pull down, you'll get a warning. The blue is usually that you're going too dark, and highlights, it will turn red. Let's see if I can get it to clip. Turn that on. It will turn red. So I always try to watch that and bring these within those parameters so you don't lose detail in your sky, because there's nothing worse than, see, even now let's go back into that mask and we'll drop this one down. See, so that's helped us straight away. Too much blue in that, so we'll bring up the shadows a little bit, maybe bring up the whites a little tiny bit, and then drop the saturation a little tiny bit. Try and keep it real. Then we'll go back in, and this time we'll just deal with the main subject. So we'll bring up the blacks a little tiny bit. Oh no, we'll drop them a little bit, and we'll bring up the shadows just to get rid of the clipping. And then the highlights, we can bring those back, and we can watch down the bottom in this section that it's getting blown out because it's seeing the reflection of the skies. So we'll bring the highlights down a little bit, but we'll also bring the brightness up to make the image stand out a little bit, but we'll bring those down and then bring the blacks slightly down. And then in this section you can add your saturation if you really want to, just to make your grass stand out. Add a little bit of clarity if you really want to, but it all depends if you're going to use my first option that I showed you with the, it all depends if you're going to use the high pass filter way of sharpening, which is actually better in my opinion than using sharpening and textures in here. And then you can go back to your normal and then click OK. So now the image will change quite a bit. Should have done it as a copy layer really, so I could show you the before and after. But that's the after effect and the way it really does pop out.
Okay guys, that's the 3 tips on how to create better images in Photoshop. Hopefully you learned something from it and you'll take something from this video. If you did, please like and subscribe. It really does help the channel. And until next time, take care and I'll catch you soon.